Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of Monday Warfare, The Battles Within. We're at episode 14, and happy March, everyone. Happy March, Steve. I think that means spring, WrestleMania. A lot of things are around the corner.
Yeah, lots of good things coming around the corner, for sure.
Yeah, you know, I hated the fact that we've been bombarded with snow, but now that it melted today, it was like 50 degrees here today after being like 7 degrees 2 days ago. But now that it's 75% melted, I kind of groan because that means that time of year is coming where I have to cut the grass and weed and edge and pull weed. Oh, just, I don't know, man. Sometimes I just wish the snow covered the grass all year round. I don't know.
I already miss the snow. I love snow. It's so peaceful and it's pretty beautiful, to say the least. So I miss it for sure. It looks so dirty and nasty as soon as when there's very little left and all you got is like your mud pits and snow that
the like disgusting plowed up piles. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty. So, but when it's 6-7 inches deep, it's quite the sight. I feel sorry for those people who can't ever experience that.
And in case you guys don't know by now, you're listening to Ray Russell and Steve Eckstadt. Gonna call another one here, another 2 weeks of the Monday Night War. That's 1 week of Nitro and 2 weeks of Raw, because as we kick things off here, Steve, we're in March of 2021. Well, we're also in March of 1996. Just seems to be the way it works out right now. And as we start March of 96 off, it's March 4th. And there's no WCW Nitro for the first time since it started way back on September 4th. So they've run 6 full months, and now they're interrupted by a Civil War miniseries, which also interrupted the main event the night before.
Yeah, it's not just Vince that's susceptible to these things. I didn't remember this. I thought Nitro was always on. I never realized they got interrupted for anything. So this was news to me. So
yeah, I was a little bit shocked myself when I realized there was no Nitro. I'm used to Raw missing Gone to the Dogs or the U.S. Open, but yeah, it just threw me off here. No Nitro. Let's see if WWF...
Those things are like yearly, you know. They're yearly, so you remember them things. Like you just know it's coming. And then they didn't even miss anything for the Atlanta games and everything. All their people were Atlanta guys, so it's kind of weird they get bumped for a Civil War special, especially when Nitro's been really killing it. They've been on a hot streak as far as ratings. Both places have as far as total viewers, so definitely odd timing. I'm sure Bischoff wasn't happy.
Well, I'm sure Bischoff wasn't happy, but we'll see. We'll see what they do in the ratings and see if Ted Turner was happy when we get to the end of this week. And let's talk a little WWF news before we see if Vince can capitalize on his Raw with no Nitro going up against them. We learned that Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, has given notice to the WWF to jump to WCW back on February 20th. Meanwhile, while this episode of Raw is March 4th, I figured I'd mention this now, Kevin Nash gives notice to Vince on March 5th at 10:35 a.m., the following day after this Raw. So both Hall and Nash are WCW bound. And when we find out that Razor Ramon has just happened to be suspended on the very day he gave notice to Vince McMahon, they claim that it was a mere coincidence that he failed a marijuana drug test, something that nobody else had ever done in the company. Vince's response was, "There's nothing I can do about that coincidence." And that's all you get out of Vince McMahon. Here, what is your take? I think sour grapes on Vince's part, and obviously it's just backlash for poor Razor Ramon. Meanwhile, Kevin Nash, because he's working Taker at Mania, gets to remain on.
I have no issues with this at all. I mean, you're leaving Vince high and dry right in the middle of this war, and business is business. You can play one way, he'll play another way. So I don't. Well,
that's been obvious for decades. Vince is going to do what Vince is going to do, and hey, man, there's nothing Vince can do about a coincidence.
No, absolutely not. He has a bunch of coincidences that somehow benefit him every single time.
All the time. It's reported that
works.
Yeah, it's reported that there are no celebrities at WrestleMania 12 this year. The superstars are being billed as the celebrities. That's a nice way to say a cost-cutting measure, I would imagine.
They don't need them.
No, I think other than something like a Mike Tyson, these celebrities never add anything other than a lot more money to the bill. I can't imagine what some of these people get paid versus some of the guys on the actual show.
Right. I've been watching some reason Superstars 94, and they're hyping up Cy Sperling, and I'm like, why are you wasting your money on this dude?
Right. Oh yeah.
Gives a shit about Hair Club for Men.
Yeah.
So
that was an odd one.
Save money.
Absolutely.
It's whatever. Vince. I think once you get like all the manias were kind of built around celebrities somewhat, and so once you start that tradition, you almost probably got to do it just because it is something that is affiliated with WrestleMania. But I think by 10, 11, it was the wrestlers that were the main attraction, obviously. So I don't care. None of them did anything for me, really.
No, very, 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 very few celebrities really ever meant anything, I would say, at a WrestleMania. But Vince just loved to tout that and use it to sell the brand, obviously, on the news and things like that whenever it got reported. But no celebrities this year. And on the USWA television program, the Saturday prior to this Raw on March 2nd, Sid Vicious popped up doing color commentary. He claimed he is retiring from the WWF due to neck and back injuries, a.k.a. it's softball season.
Go have fun, Sid.
And Sid will return. All is forgiven, and we'll get into that much later on into the summer here in the WWF. But did you know that Sunny is here in the WWF now, and she's no longer just a manager? She's basically their sex goddess on TV in these days, and sex sells, Steve, because WWF is now introducing a new T-shirt of Sunny with her top unbuttoned as she leans over. I think it was a full pool table, or she leans over something with her cleavage there, her cleavage hanging out. And there's a saying, there's a slogan on that shirt that says, "I like it raw." And I remember this shirt vividly because the minute we walked into SummerSlam 96, my cousin went and purchased this shirt, and then I got to stare at her on his shirt for the remainder of the night. It was lovely.
I'm sure she does like it raw too.
Well, I don't know what she likes right now.
After her video came out.
Oh my, that video! Oh dear God, hope to never see that again.
OSW reviewed it.
Yeah, well,
shit.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people review. I've heard Bruce Pritchard review it. I've heard a few people review it. It's
wow. I'm sure it's gotten around.
Mm-hmm.
Probably nothing they haven't seen before.
Well, nothing's got around more than Sunny herself, I'm so sure.
Yeah.
We've been talking about ratings here, especially on the last episode, where the ratings just seem to keep rising and rising here, not just for the WWF, but also WCW. Well, the WWF continued both its business, not just on TV, but at the house shows. Everything's picking up. There's a hot streak, so to speak, in the professional wrestling business here at the beginning of 1996, and it's also dealing with some more hard luck when it comes to injuries and other out-of-the-ring problems over the past couple of weekends here in the WWF. Here's the good news. After doing gates of 7,300 in Pittsburgh and 7,600 in Cleveland, Ohio on February 25th on a double shot, Pittsburgh received its highest dollar amount for a house show other than SummerSlam in 4 years, while Cleveland was the best house show in the market in 6 years, which would go back to the Richfield Coliseum and the WrestleMania 6 era. So big upswing here on the house shows as they returned to touring on March 1st and did over 4,000 in Augusta, Maine. That's their all-time record. Worcester, Massachusetts did 5,800, and Springfield, Massachusetts, their best in 4 years, finishing off with 6,400, and everybody hitting new records for the first time. And look at that era, 4 or 5 years. You're going back 90, 91, 92. That's as the decline started. And then by 93, obviously everything fell apart as far as the house shows went.
Yeah, I think that's when they just started touring like the Northeast, really, and got rid of like the B and C shows and just put everybody together. So, yeah, it's quite impressive. I really don't know what is causing the bump. I'm just wondering if, I think we mentioned at the end of last week's show, like if Nitro did another day and if they would still be around just because of how big these audiences were, kind of share the pot or give each other their own days where you can attract the whole wrestling audience instead of just half and sharing it. But I think just like you mentioned, the war itself and just having two shows on at the same time, something about that aura, the mystique, or what's going to happen on each show, and you're flipping back and forth, or in your case, you're recording and watching later. it's just some excitement and something like, okay, what are they going to do next, and that sort of stuff that you just didn't have in wrestling for a long time.
Yeah, I have to give a lot of the credit to the actual war. I mean, as you said, like what's really happening on these shows. I mean, we're lambasting the WCW on the weekly here with this awful Hulk Hogan shit. So that's certainly not what's drawn in the viewers, right. I would think. And Raw's just kind of
jobbers and recap videos and slam jam and a bunch of stupid shit that it's not bad. It's just this typical Raw. Nothing.
Yeah, there's nothing to draw in a new crowd.
You're pulling in like 3.5 rating and things. Like, what is doing that? And it's sure as hell not what you're seeing on TV. So kudos to them for whatever they did. I don't know what they did. I just think probably a perfect storm of something. I know the weather was real bad in '96. So like people were just stuck at home and flipping through the channels and they're like, oh, wrestling's on this channel and this channel? What the hell's going on here? I haven't watched this in years. And something caught their attention.
So even though...
Who knows what that is?
Right. So even though they did great business here on this house show run for the last couple of weeks, the shows were once again marred by injury. Of course, Jeff Jarrett injured by Ahmed Johnson, Diesel also with a supposed injury, the suspension of Scott Hall, and family problems for Yokozuna, who had to leave and go home to take care of some family business, which again caused the advertised main events to not go on as scheduled. Also, over the course of those couple weeks, Owen Hart, Marty Jannetty, and even The Undertaker missed a date or two. So there was a lot of guys missing in action on some of these house shows. In fact, I attended one of these shows, and I can verify Hall and Nash were both no-goes, and they were part of a double main event, both of these guys. So the very first thing they did before the show was announce that neither guy would be there, and they offered a refund. As long as you went and got your refund it was either before or after the third match on the card, they would give you your refund. And that was something they had never done before. At least they'd never announced it. Apparently it was always there. The option was always there. They just never told you that the option was there. And at this point, they started announcing this. And I had this happen to me 2 or 3 times moving forward. I would go to a show and 2 or 3 big names would miss. Now, this time it was Razor suspended, Diesel's injured. That's why. Another time there was a blizzard. And I think like Jericho and a couple other fairly big names up on the show weren't going to be there. And they, again, offered refunds. So this was the first time I ever heard that. And I had attended quite a few WWF shows over the last 7 years at least. Quite often, I mean.
Yeah, if you got a refund, did you have to like leave? Or could you stay for the rest of the show?
No, that's what you get the refund for. As long as you're leaving by the third match, which later on it got even better. Like during the Attitude Era when they offered this, it was intermission. As long as you went and got refund by intermission, during intermission and left, obviously, you can get your money back. So, yeah, but here it was, if you left by the third match and got your money back, so you could see a couple curtain jerkers and then on your way out the door if you want the cash back. I stuck around for the entire show. It was a fairly solid show, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, usually when like that happens, usually they make up for it somehow. Obviously, people pay to see the names, and if you're not seeing them, fine, but I don't think they're going to half-ass it and give you something garbage. I know maybe they had to if it just wasn't available to them to do anything better than what they gave you. But at the same time, I don't feel like they would shortchange you.
I will say in this particular instance with Hall and Nash both missing the show that I attended, I couldn't tell you who replaced Diesel or what he was doing on that show, but I do remember Razor was scheduled to wrestle the 1-2-3 Kid in one of those Crybaby matches. And his replacement was Roddy Piper. So, I mean, no complaints there. It was a fun match.
Oh, I bet. I think you talked about that last time, but that would be hilarious.
Yeah.
That's like a type of match that's suited for Roddy Piper.
Oh,
just
absolutely.
To make somebody belittled like that.
Yeah, and the silly bumps by the Kid in that one. It's one of the few matches that stick in my head still to this day that I watched at a house show. There's tons of matches that when I go back and look at results from shows I've attended, I go, I saw that match? I don't remember that, but I remember that one vividly. It was a fun match. But we'll get going here. It's WWF Monday Night Raw for March 4th, taped back on February 19th in the Cincinnati Garden, Cincinnati, Ohio. We kick things off with another click match. Seems like we get one of these every week now, as Shawn Michaels takes on the 1-2-3 Kid, managed by the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. It's right into action as the show kicks off with Shawn Michaels making his way to ringside. No intro for the 1-2-3 Kid here, so he gets the old jobber entrance. He's already in the ring. Gets the Chiron 1-2-3 Kid. As the match gets going, the Kid with fancy footwork, but Shawn Michaels comes back showing how strong he is, presses that 100 and some pound Kid into the air, and a clothesline sends the Kid to the floor. Shawn Michaels skins the cat back inside. At this point, Vince McMahon talks with Bret Hart, who's watching backstage. Bret claims he won't fall for the tricks that the Kid's falling for. Bret and Shawn's match at WrestleMania comes down to who can sustain the most punishment. Back in the ring, the Kid does a dive out on the floor onto Shawn Michaels, and then DiBiase lays in the boots. When Vince asks Bret if he's enjoying watching this, Bret says he is not enjoying this. He wants Shawn healthy for WrestleMania. The 1-2-3 Kid gets some heat, but Shawn Michaels comes back with a flying clothesline and the big kip up, leading to Michaels with the moonsault body block, a nasty-looking flying forearm, and the top rope elbow. Shawn then chases the Kid around ringside, and the Kid lures him back inside to take back over, but misses a top rope leg drop, and one super kick later, Shawn Michaels picks up the win. 12 minutes as he dances with yet another female child. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know about the dancing either. But this was a pretty solid match. Obviously, these guys are going to work well for each other. They're buddies. They're going to get the best out of each other. And it was a really solid match. You saw some stuff that you didn't necessarily see all the time. You know, the moonsaults, the plunges, things like that. Stuff you only got from guys like 1-2-3 Kid and Shawn Michaels and stuff like that. So, pretty solid match to open the show here.
Yeah, and that's the story they tell tonight because we have Shawn here against the Kid, and then Bret later will take on Triple H. So both guys who are main eventing WrestleMania are playing who can top this, I suppose, this week is one way to look at it. Just showcasing both guys this week.
Yep.
And we will move on as 24 Karat Pictures presents a Shattered Dreams Productions, a film made by Marlena, Steve. It's Goldust in Piper's Pit.
I am big. It's the pictures that got small. Sunset Boulevard, 1950. Oh, but you were always big, Mr. President Piper, weren't you? At one time, you were literally huge. As a matter of fact, some of my earliest teenage fantasies derived right from this very pit. Watching you from the hills, I hung on your every word as each syllable spilled from your luscious lips. I sunk deeper and deeper into my own sea of ecstasy when you exploded that coconut over the head of one superfly. Oh, I myself erupted with pleasure, like a rock-hard mountain of lust. And that skirt. Oh, yes, we mustn't forget that skirt. I spent many hours of quality time alone just contemplating Grapes of Wrath. But President Piper, things are different now, aren't they? You have moved into a new set. And that set is one Hollywood. But you forget, that's my set. Oh, I've seen you in some of those films. I even got quite the rise out of They Live. Yes, you have done quite well for yourself, Mr. President Piper. As a matter of fact, you may even one day go down as an all-time Hollywood great. Maybe a great, but not the greatest. That title only belongs to one Goldust. So sit back, President Piper, and like the gentleman that you are, accept what is, simply as what is. That being your role as a World Wrestling Federation president, and merely my lowly extra when it comes to Tinseltown. Oh, by the way, maybe, just maybe, if you're a good little boy, I'll even treat you to a little something extra.
Extreme salsa, please.
Oh, yeah. You remember the name, and you will never forget. Goldust.
I don't care who he's directed by. That's one of the worst films, one of the worst pieces of acting I think we've ever seen here in the World Wrestling Federation.
You've got to be kidding me, McMahon. Have you ever seen any Roddy Piper films?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of them, and I like them. I'll tell you what,
Well, where do you want to start here, Steve?
Where do you start? Good God.
For those who haven't watched this, it's actually Goldust staged in what looked like the later in Roddy Piper's pit that he used there in the tail end of his first run, late 86, early 87 or whatever. And there's a picture of Piper on the wall. In the middle of the promo, he begins rubbing his hands up and down the body of Roddy Piper in this picture. Goldust also sporting a kilt here, or a skirt, as he referenced it. And you have any thoughts in general?
Man, it's it's something. It's so hard to even explain what Goldust is or what he's doing. I'm sure your grandpa, if he walked in and seen this,
oh my God. Reaction. I wish I could turn back time. The fact that you just said that, I wish I could turn back time. If I had a DeLorean, I don't know what I would go and change in my world, but I would make it happen to my grandfather walk in the room 30 seconds before this fucking vignette aired, because I don't even know. That might have been the end of my life watching wrestling in that household, probably. I was old enough to where he can really control me or what I watched, but he probably would have controlled what if I had a cable box at that time of night to turn this nonsense on. But I got to hand it to him in one way. This is brand new. Everything Goldust does is brand new. He's not copying from anybody. He's not stealing this from anybody. The cadence, the delivery, the whisper into the really strong endings to the sentences. It's the aggression in the words. Everything about it, the mannerisms, the movements. It's amazing.
Oh my God. It is. I mean, the stories from I heard, he wanted to get out of the shadow of his dad, and the only way he's going to do that is to become something completely different than anything his dad ever did. And when you got somebody driven, he's good in the ring. We all know Dustin Rhodes can work.
Right.
He was damn good. And that wasn't going to get him anywhere. Everybody's going, oh, it's Dustin Rhodes. That's Dusty's boy. That's how it's going to be. So he had to morph into something like this, if that's what his sole goal was to get out of his dad's shadow. And so for him to take this and do what he did here, and this early run Goldust is so far ahead of his time that I don't even think people comprehended what we were watching back then.
Right.
Like you get it, you understand it to a degree, but I don't think you can fully understand what exactly we was watching at the time. You had to have been a diehard wrestling fan, I feel like, that was older, that kind of got where he was coming from, so to speak, where, like I said, he's trying to get out of his dad's shadow. And once you knew who he was, that probably changed your perspective. I didn't really watch any of Dustin Rhodes, so like Goldust was the first I've ever seen him work. And I was put off by him. I ain't gonna lie. I was like 8 or 9 years old, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? Or 10 years old at the time. And I'm like, what the heck is this? And he's rubbing all over himself, and he's rubbing all over his opponents. I'm like, man, just wrestle, like that sort of deal. So I didn't get it. I didn't understand the gimmick. I didn't understand any part of it. But it's just next level. It's so far ahead of its time, man. And I hate to we say that a lot about a lot of things, but this is truly one of those things that will never be replicated.
It's
ever.
probably not. It's never going to be replicated because it's not permitted in today's society. The cancel culture would put the end to this in 1 week's time.
Yeah, even if that wasn't a thing, everything would just be a ripoff. That's how good he did.
Oh, sure,
like, nobody
absolutely.
could do that. Nobody could do this again, permitted or not, to where anybody would take it and believe it, because that's how good he did. It's one of those things, like, you just can't. Nobody's going to be Goldust ever again.
Yeah, and some of the lines here, I just don't know. There were some crazy lines last time on the Monday Warfare show that I actually. It forced me to go. I don't really pull audio sound bites for the Monday Warfare show, but I had to go back and do that after we did editing because you mentioned on the show, man, I wish you grabbed that. And so I had to go back and get it because, I mean, I couldn't justify it on the show just trying to replicate it by mentioning some, quick notes. And that was crazy that he got away with that. But here this week, he's talking about eruptions or explosions and of lust when the coconut cracked over Snuka's head, and he sticks his lips on the bagpipes, wants to give Piper something and blows it, if you will. And I was just, wow. And then it continues on here in the next week when the two get in the ring with each other, which we'll talk about before we end this episode of Monday Warfare. Goldust it's like when things got really intense going into the Rumble with Razor and Goldust, it really peaked. And then it felt like for about a month, it kind of slowly, it wasn't as hot as it was. I don't know if that was Razor's fault.
They toned it down.
Yeah. I don't know what
toned it down to the backlash.
Well, they fucking, Vince doesn't give a shit here anymore about backlash.
No, he doesn't. He's at a war now, so he doesn't give a shit about anything. I think two things I want to say about this. The best part about it is that he still sticks to the gimmick by giving movie quotes that, like, I'm stuck in my thoughts or whatever. Like, he quoted the Grapes of Wrath. Like, the guy's not referring to sex or whatever it is that Goldust is referring to, but he implements those lines to get over his character. And second, it's one thing to hear him talk about it over the phone, and it's just noise. It's just him talking.
Right. It's
a whole nother thing watching the video, like him in this Piper's Pit playing with the bagpipes and rubbing all over himself and all over Piper and just his mannerisms. It's just, it takes it to a whole other level. Like I said, you can hear him talk about it all day, but then you see him in action doing it, and it's like, holy shit.
Oh yeah.
This dude's all in. He's all in.
Yeah, and that's so funny. They talk about a lot of guys failing because they weren't all in on their gimmicks. Some of them you could argue, I don't know how much more, Terry Taylor could go all in on a Red Rooster gimmick to get over, but we have seen guys who, like the Dynamic Dudes, they weren't all in, and look what happened there. But Goldust is absolutely all in. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And
he's loving it.
We've already seen some teasers that the Ultimate Warrior might be on his way back to the WWF. Fans pleading with President Piper to bring the Warrior back. Let's hear what's going on here in the world of the Ultimate Warrior and the WWF.
Never before in the history of the World Wrestling Federation has one single force generated the intensity and raw energy of the Ultimate Warrior. No one could instantly electrify a crowd like the Warrior. Empowered by the Warrior inside the heart of all of his fans, the Warrior's rise to the top of the World Wrestling Federation was unquestionably meteoric. WrestleMania 6 became his launching pad, lasting off in front of 67,000 fans, defeating the self-professed immortal Hulk Hogan the very next year. The Ultimate Warrior continued to soar through WrestleMania 7 with a victory over the Macho Man Randy Savage, and then mystique turned to mystery. The Ultimate Warrior vanished. Yet in his absence, the legend of the Ultimate Warrior continued to grow. But now, after a great deal of speculation, it is official. Yes, with WrestleMania once again descending, brace yourself for the return of the most intense, reckless skyrocket of them all, the Ultimate Warrior.
Reckless, indeed. He's back. The Warrior returns at WrestleMania, and you love those jabs they took as he beat the self-professed immortal Hulk Hogan and the Macho Man at WrestleMania 6 and 7 there.
You realize no snide remarks towards Macho Man. It was just straight at Hogan.
Right.
That's one thing. Like Vince never trashed Macho. I know he did the Nacho Man here, but I think that you had to do that just to get over what they was trying to do. But other than that, like he never went out of his way to badmouth Macho Man. I don't even think he talked about Macho Man. So. That's very interesting.
You know, after the rumors came out many years after this, I don't know that he trashed the Macho Man, but he certainly completely blackballed the Macho Man for quite a long period of time there.
Well, yeah, I get that, but I mean, he kind of bagged on Hogan all the time.
Yeah, I think Hogan was, they've always described the Hogan relationship as a love-hate relationship. I think Randy was more like, I don't want to say a son, but like a brother maybe. Like, just very, very close. Family, obviously. Yeah. And that really, really, really hurt Vince.
He thought he was more loyal than he was.
Yeah, when Savage jumped. Hurt Vince. So it's a different
They never announced that. You know how he announced it? Like I don't think he ever did that to anyone else.
No, he never. No, and he put Savage over, wished him well and things. It was very different, for sure.
Yeah. But I know about the Warrior, though, man. I don't think there's any music that gives me goosebumps more. And then I don't think anyone but Vince can sell the Ultimate Warrior like he did.
Oh, it took me back to 1990. I was 10 and 11 years old again here, just when he said, "Oh, Ultimate Warrior," and I hear that music. It felt like, I was 6 years younger than this here in 1996. I was pumped because, like I said on earlier episodes, he was still 1990 Ultimate Warrior to me. I didn't realize what we were getting until we got what we were getting here when he finally shows up. And they even masqueraded pretty well at the actual WrestleMania. It was what happened after that just didn't feel like the same Warrior anymore, really, to me.
Yeah, and he kind of changed towards the end of '92 anyway.
Right.
When he came back that run, he was kind of, I don't know, whenever he cut his hair, he just seemed different, which is weird. I think
he was less warrior-y. He was more of a real human. Yeah.
Yep.
So we hit this height, dude. I'm guaranteeing you, when I saw this live, I was fucking going insane because I was a Warrior Mark, and it's not cool to be a Warrior Mark in today's day and age, Steve. You're not supposed to say that out loud because you've been reading the sheets for 20 and 30 years, and you've been taught that you're not allowed to like guys unless they have a certain work rate. And I was a kid, and he appealed to kids. Clearly, he did something to sell merchandise because he wouldn't have been on top if he wasn't, over. So anybody who pretends like they didn't like the Warrior, now I'm sure there were detractors. I never liked Hulk Hogan. So I'm sure there are plenty of people that weren't fans of Warrior, but you can't tell me that nobody liked the Ultimate Warrior.
I see posts on social media things, and it's like, I don't see the appeal of this guy. I don't get it. I don't understand. He sucked in the ring. He had terrible promos. And it's just the same rehash shit that people have been selling for the last 30 years. And it's so far from the truth unless you lived it. And I can't say I lived it. I can say that me being a wrestling fan is because of him and Macho Man at WrestleMania 7. So I got the appeal. Like, there was something about the guy. He was a superhero come to life. He was nuts. The hair, the face paint, the armbands, just the entire, he's the total package when it came to a character. And he believed in the character. He lived the character. His promos are not bad. He says some off-the-wall shit, but it makes sense. Hulk Hogan said a bunch of off-the-wall shit, like telling everybody to jump on his back and he can backstroke him up to miss whatever the hell it is, like just to save him from Trump Tower crumbling, which just happened a week ago, this past weekend. They actually, anyway, like Hogan said ridiculous things. They're not supposed to make sense, guys. It's not about that. Sell the match. You're not Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels trying to tell a story. You're Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior telling a story, and there's a huge difference. Two of them are superheroes. The other two are wrestlers. That's the difference. Understand it, and then do some history. That's really all it takes. Do some research.
Right. So we get brought up so high. The Warriors coming back at WrestleMania 12, and then Doc Hendricks there with his shit band, and I honestly didn't remember it lasting this long. It's not really prominently featured, but it's still there, and it's like, why? As we go back to the ring, Justin Hawk Bradshaw makes his Raw debut, managed by Dirty Dutch Mantel, known here as Zebekiah, taking on Hakushi. Talk about a contrast of style here. The Justin Bradshaw character versus Hakushi. Even Vince refers to Bradshaw as a throwback to Stan Hansen, as we get Roddy Piper on the phone. And we saw this a week or two ago with Ahmed Johnson in the ring. I can't remember who called in, but we got it was Goldust. It was the Goldust phone call, right? And then Ahmed Johnson was in the ring. So it's another 2 birds, 1 stone here. And probably for good reason, too. Not a very good match. So Piper says he has news. He will announce the Warriors' opponent next week. And you won't believe who it is. I wrote, That made me wonder, was this supposed to be somebody other than who it actually winds up being? Roddy also talks about Goldust in the video that just aired. He compares Goldust to Roddy Piper, says it's all mind games. He doesn't buy any of this. And we go back to the ring. It's Bradshaw mauling Hakushi, but misses a charge in the corner. Hakushi nails a handspring elbow. Bradshaw goes to the floor, and Hakushi tries a plancha in which it was evident that Bradshaw was supposed to catch him. But Hakushi lands on Bradshaw so high that he actually has to take the bump. But then JBL pops up and doesn't even sell the plancha because he wasn't supposed to take the bump. So he picks Hakushi up, smashes him into the apron, and a power slam on the floor before throwing poor Hakushi back into the ring for a big boot and a lariat, pinning Hakushi in 4 minutes and 10 seconds. And if that wasn't enough, he hog ties Hakushi and they brand him in one little area where he doesn't have tattoos anyway. I just wrote, fuck this. I'm out, man. I feel so bad for Shinzaki at this point.
Yeah, I do too. I wish it was somebody different. I thought Bradshaw looked good. I love the clothesline. It's so nasty. I've always been a fan of the clothesline. Yeah, I had the exact same thing. My same thought process was, why does this have to be Hakushi? Why couldn't it be somebody else?
Yeah, all the guys on the roster, Bob Holly and guys like that, Aldo Montoya, Barry Horowitz, and they choose Hakushi. Obviously, he's on his way out. And they're going to have him do jobs on the way out.
Yeah.
So technically, had Bradshaw caught that plancha like he was supposed to, Hakushi would have gotten in exactly 1 offensive move in the match. Just absolutely disgusting. We move on to a Mankind vignette, number 5 in a line of Mankind vignettes. This time he talks in the pitch dark. When he was younger, he could hear through the walls. Mommy tried to make excuses for him, but he, whoever he is, he said Mankind had to go away. He was becoming a man and had to own up to his behavior. You should have seen the look on this man's face when Mankind confronted him. Mankind is about to pay back all of the perpetrators. No one will have a nice day.
Damn good.
Yeah, I hadn't realized. I knew there were several vignettes. I just didn't realize if these keep going on up until WrestleMania, that's a lot of fucking vignettes. I just hadn't realized it was that many. And before we go into the main event, $80 WrestleMania 12 replica chairs. $80 for a replica chair.
I wish I had like 15 of them.
Well, I know you're a collector, Steve, man, but sometimes we just have to look at these ridiculous prices for these things at the time, and not so much what they're valued here in 25 years later.
Well, I mean, $80 is relatively cheap considering what a front row ticket to WrestleMania would have cost you.
This is not a WrestleMania chair. This is a replica chair, though. It's like a replica belt.
It's like the same.
I'm sure it's the same fucking thing, but I'm just saying.
I don't know how you can get a fake chair, or what is it, faux leather, or is it different material?
It's probably spongy
the exact
shit.
Same one. It's just not at the show.
No, I mean,
honestly,
man, tickets to WrestleMania back then really weren't that insane. I mean, they were pretty affordable compared to what they are now.
Oh no, go look at the WrestleMania 7 ticket prices.
Yeah,
you can get like a round trip ticket on an airplane and everything for like $1,000, and that's like 4 front row seats, and this is everything. Flight, hotel, everything. I'm like,
right.
That's insane. You can get like a front row seat for $100. Those were the days.
Yeah. People talk about inflation. This is not inflation. When you do inflation prices from that long ago, it's only about double now. So it's like $2,000, maybe a few bucks more than that. But I mean, this has nothing to do with inflation. It has to do with Vince inflating prices. Not necessarily the inflation of the dollar bill, however. As we move into the main... What's that?
I was just going to say it's all where it's at. I mean, the same tickets to Raymond James Stadium last year or whenever the last time they were in Florida were like $400 cheaper in Florida than they were for the New York show. because me and my friends were thinking about going to the New York show, but it was like $700 for top row bleeders.
I'll pass, man. I'll pass. I screwed myself. Like I had ample opportunity to go to several WrestleManias. I had a ticket in my hand to WrestleMania 17, and they wound up getting sold to somebody else, and I didn't go. And kick my own ass for that one. But we'll close out this episode of Raw. At least the wrestling-wise, we'll close out this episode of Raw. The main event match, WWF Champion Bret Hart taking on Triple H, coming to the ring this time by Emerald Hart. No relation to Bret. It's back and forth action, and Bret winds up on top of Hunter as HBK comes to ringside and pulls up a chair to watch Bret up close and personal. Bret was supposed to take a bump to the floor to land by HBK, but Tim White was in the way, so Bret couldn't roll. He kind of got stuck on the apron, so he rolls back inside and has Triple H throw him back out again. Shows you the veteran behavior here of the Hitman. Wanted to make it realistic, like he likes to do with everything. It's like, I'm not going to just roll out now. It's too obvious. So I'm going to roll back in and have Hunter throw me back out. Lousy hyena. As Bret goes to the floor, he begins to argue with Shawn Michaels. What are you doing out here? But Shawn actually warns Bret Hart to look out. Behind him, Triple H coming off the apron. Bret catches him with a punch to the midsection. Triple H does manage to take over in the ring as we go through not one but two commercial breaks during this match. And Hunter off the middle rope into a foot to the face by Bret Hart. And Bret comes back with the 5 moves of doom, but Triple H takes back over once again. Again off the middle rope. This time looks like shooting for a drop kick maybe. And he gets caught by Bret straight into the sharpshooter. Exactly like the spot we saw with Shawn Michaels and Bret at the finish of the Survivor Series 92 match. Go figure. And we get a submission win here as Bret Hart over Triple H with the sharpshooter in about 12 and a half minutes. And Shawn celebrates in the aisle. He claps for the Hitman.
Yeah, they don't hate each other yet. The match hasn't happened.
Boy, if they don't hate each other yet, Bret's comments next week on TV would make me hate him. I'll tell you that much. Well, we'll get there in a little bit. And we'll close out this episode of Raw. I picked this up. I grabbed this screen cap from the show. The following satire is intended to entertain and inform. The quotes contained herein are actual quotes by the man who could control 50% of America's cable systems, Ted Turner. It's TV Trivia, a faux game show with billionaire Ted as one of the contestants. Let's listen.
Welcome to TV Trivia. Today's contestants are Billionaire Ted, the man who's trying to put the World Wrestling Federation out of business, and Candy. And the category is Pompous Quotes. Here we go. Question number 1. Which sports personality suspended from Major League Baseball for tampering said, "The world has gotten along without Abraham Lincoln, John F. Kennedy, and Jesus Christ. Baseball can get along without me"?
Pete Rose.
Ooh, nice try, Billionaire Ted.
Yes, the correct answer is Billionaire Ted. Next question. Who made the racial comment, "As for blacks, well, most of them are not really black anyway. They're brown"? Well, aren't they? It's very seldom you see a really black.
Michael Jackson. Yeah. Wow.
That's funny, Billionaire Ted.
Right again. Next question. What often married person said, "Henry VIII didn't get divorced. He just had his wives' heads chopped off when he got tired of them"? That's a good way to get rid of a woman. No alimony.
Yeah, well, that was my buddy OJ, yeah.
Shame on you, Billionaire Ted.
Yes, the correct answer is Billionaire Ted. By the way, Nacho Man, where's the huckster tonight?
Somebody help me, brother. I helped the lady handcuff me, and I can't get out. He's a little tied up right now, yeah!
Okay, back to the questions. Which carpetbagger said, "If you want to fish, go out and make $1 million and buy your own stream"?
George Steinbrenner. Oh, damn.
Are you staring, Billionaire Ted?
Candy, you are absolutely perfect so far.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I'll say she is.
Oh, yeah!
And here's our final question. Who said, I'm worth a couple of $1 billion and I feel poor? I really do.
Rupert Murdoch. John Malone. Michael Milken.
Billionaire Ted?
What? No. All right, that's enough. I mean, I own this network. I own this game show. Right now, I'm pulling the plug. Yeah, I think I'm powerful now. Wait till I get my hands on Time Warner.
Okay, and that ends that segment. And a couple of visuals here you guys didn't see. They actually show the Huckster handcuffed to the turnbuckles, a spoof from the February 26th Nitro when Elizabeth couldn't get him cuffed and Hogan had to help her a little bit there. And that's why he said, I helped the lady handcuff me and I can't get out. And then you might have heard Macho Man say, or the Nacho Man say, ooh, yeah. And then that boink noise. He's actually staring at some other lady's cleavage and they knock him out with a high heel shoe there. So some comedy bits on Hogan and Macho Man in between. And all of those quotes were direct quotes from Ted Turner. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Some of the stuff that people could get away with and say, like right now, like if he did that right now, he'd be kicked out of whatever he has left, which I don't think he has anything left, to be honest with you.
Then he has dementia or whatever he was diagnosed with too, some type of Alzheimer's or dementia or whatnot.
It's unfortunate, but yeah, this is some insane quotes there. Like, wow.
So the whole point of this is Vince has been shitting his pants that Turner's merging with Time Warner. He's fearing that Turner's going to take over everything. Obviously, half the cable systems, and he's going to become a trillionaire basically, and he's going to merge with Warner. And Vince is scared to death, and it's ironic because it's not Turner that really takes over Time Warner. It's Time Warner that takes over Turner and essentially, eventually, boots him out and kind of kiboshes WCW. Says, really, at the end of the day, aids Vince McMahon.
Yeah, it's funny how that works out, huh? I don't know, man. Those quotes, wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite a few. And I liked some of the answers. They were pretty clever, whoever they came up with the answers, because a lot of the answers, Michael Jackson, O.J. Simpson, they kind of made sense to some of the quotes that they were spouting out. So,
Pete Rose,
yeah. Segment of the night, Steve, was it Bret and Triple H, Shawn and the Kid, the Shattered Dreams Productions, or Candy there, the other contestant that beat Billionaire Ted?
I put down the Shawn and Kid match, but I mean, to be honest with you, I just like what they did with both guys. Some tune-up matches with some name opponents, two guys that would work well with them. You know, Kid's more the speed of Shawn, and Hunter's filling things out and still learning and getting in the ring with Bret. They had similar styles, so it wasn't going to be a bad match. So I think I just thought it was a really good job overall from all four guys. Basically, the main event at WrestleMania 12 was well established here, and I thought they did a good job. And I will give credit to Jerry Lawler. Throughout the match, he was teasing the Shawn turn. Like Shawn was going to do something to Bret, kind of like what we've seen on the Grenade with Eddie Gilbert and Tommy Rich.
Right.
Just those little teases, and you're just waiting for it. You're watching. Is he going to do something? And that always intrigues me. It always adds to it. And so I thought that was a really solid job there by Lawler. I thought it was a good show. They did a really good job with this show.
Yeah, I thought so too. It was very basic, though. Like you point out, nothing fancy on the show, but they got both main eventers out there in solid matches with two mid-card guys that can perform. I enjoyed the Shawn and Kid match better, just more my pace, more interesting and overall, but nothing wrong with either match. And even the Goldust promo, the whole vignette there, that was intriguing to say the least. And I actually enjoyed this Billionaire Ted sketch as well. So another good one here. And so I'm gonna go Shawn and the Kid as well. Not that Bret and Triple H was all that bad. I just, like I said, I preferred the pace of the Shawn and Kid match just a little bit better.
I think that's why they had Shawn down there to help with the match itself.
Well, good point. Good point. And the ratings are in. Monday Night Raw goes unopposed, and it does a 3.6 rating with a 5.2 share. So the rating's up just a little bit, but the share is pretty impressive. 5% of America who has cable is watching wrestling here, even if Nitro's not on. So they did get some of the WCW fans. Not all of them, but they got some. Here's the kicker, though. With no Nitro, the Civil War miniseries for Monday night does a 6.4 rating and a 9.4 share. That's 9.4 is, I think, more than Raw and Nitro combined on a weekly. So a good call there by Turner, just bumping Nitro out this week for the Civil War miniseries, which clearly had more interest. So yeah, that's where we're at.
I'm not surprised. It's something probably new for the time as far as a long miniseries like that about the Civil War. So I think it was like the I don't even know the anniversary of the year. I couldn't tell you. History's not my thing. But we kind of figured it was going to do well. Like the dog show does well, so the Civil War should do well too, right?
Yeah, and all you millennials out there, and whatever the next one up is, it's the Generation Y, Z, I don't know. But all you guys living, you youngsters out there, there were a lot less cable channels back then. Let me just preface that. Like, there were like 60 channels in all, I think. And I had like every channel other than like HBO, the paid channels and things inside there. There wasn't like astronomical hundreds of channels like there are now that you get to choose from all this shit. Your main cable channels were TBS, TNT, USA. Those were some of the very main channels that you would flip to. So it doesn't surprise me at all that if you got cable and you're flipping around, that's a hell of an impressive rating. It just shows you, even though wrestling's been taken off lately, it's still nowhere near the level of real life TV, like things that other people are interested in here. It almost doubles the Raw rating.
Yeah, and it's also like, there's not a history channel that you can flip to and get the Civil War whenever you want. Like if a cable company like TNT was going to do a mini series on the Civil War, everybody's going to be going to TNT to watch that. You can't, it's not something that's just being rehashed elsewhere. It was only available on those channels. Like you said, we didn't have very many options.
Oh, and there were no apps, no internet. Channels. Right, there was no apps, no these things like this. Just go find these documentaries anytime you want them.
Yeah, it was a lot more difficult. If it wasn't on TV, you couldn't really watch it unless you went to the video store.
And as we move into the next week, before we get to Nitro, just some really quick WCW news. Johnny B. Bad is gone. As of this episode of Nitro, the same day Johnny B. Bad quits WCW, his contract actually ended at the end of February. He's working without a contract here. And he winds up not really getting fired. It seemed amicable, but Bad basically told Bischoff that, hey, WWF offered me this much money. It was much more than what Bischoff was willing to give Johnny. And so Bischoff wished him well. And a lot of the stuff wrote in The Observer, very recently I listened to an Eric Bischoff podcast, and he denied a lot of it. He put a completely different spin on some of the other parts of it. So him and a few others that do podcasts are not very big fans of Dave Meltzer. They give him credit for some of the research he does and the facts, like the numbers that he comes up with and all these things, but it's his opinions and his bullshit and his hearsay that he spreads his truth is what really irritates them here. And Bischoff really claims that a lot of this stuff wasn't true, the reason that Johnny B. Bad wasn't renewed in the contract or whatever. Bischoff said he offered Johnny a new contract. It simply wasn't for the price that Johnny wanted, and obviously he was getting paid a lot more by Vince to jump, so Bischoff said, okay, that's okay, and that was the end of that. So Bad actually winded up dropping the TV title to Lex Luger on the March 9th edition of WCW Saturday Night. Now you might say, well, he quit on the 11th. Why would he have dropped it on the 9th? Because it had to be taped before that. He actually dropped the belt a few weeks ago, I guess, at a TV taping because there were already issues because the contract had expired. Now, why Luger? I don't know. We'll get to that in a little bit. There's so many other names that could have come up with here. Also, the Nasty Boys were originally scheduled for this episode of Nitro to take on the Road Warriors. DeMeltz notes they might be gone from the company as well with the influx of talent coming in to cover the contracts, the financial contracts of Hall, Nash, the Steiner brothers on their way in here, and a few others. And we kick off W's. Yeah, well, they do pop back up there around the NWO, but then we don't see them ever again. And as you say, good riddance.
You see Knobs, not Sags, but
right. Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. Knobs does return eventually. As we move on to WCW Monday Nitro, they're back after a week off in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, in front of 6,899 fans, all paying. So I'm not sure if they did more with paper or not, but that's about 7,000 fans paying, but not so surprised here. We're in Crockett country. As we kick things off with Party Hat Pepe, along with Mongo, Bobby Heenan, and Eric Bischoff, to the ring, where the Giant, accompanied by Jimmy Hart, takes on Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Jim Duggan wisely attacks the Giant, even dives off the apron, but he's caught and thrown into the ring post by the big man. A bear hug sequence that just goes on far too long for my taste. Duggan winds up surviving it, however, and Giant misses a charge into the corner, which allows Duggan to nail the 3-point stance clothesline, sending the Giant over the ropes to the floor. But he lands on his feet and he's right back in for another bear hug. Duggan breaks free once more and goes to the floor, which I thought this was kind of clever. Instead of pulling the tape out of his trunks for once, he actually rips the duct tape off the floor that's holding the padding down, the mat down outside, and wraps it around his fist. I thought that was kind of clever. As the Giant throws Randy Anderson aside, who visibly still sees Duggan with the tape hanging from his hand, blasts the Giant once, twice, 3 times. And Giant takes an insanely awesome slow motion fall, kind of like the one he did off the top rope in Super Brawl with Hogan. I enjoyed it here. The crowd pops like crazy. Nobody does the old knock down the big man spot better than Duggan. It was great even when he did it Yokozuna.
Oh yeah, he's good at that spot. And the Giant did a great job of selling it for him. So
and that's at this point, that's about the only thing Jim Duggan's good for. Is Jimmy Hart distracts while he grabs the tape hanging from Duggan's hand. So Duggan had the duct tape, but it's hanging about 3 feet off his hand. Jimmy Hart actually grabs a piece of the tape and tugs at Duggan. And Duggan clocks Jimmy Hart, but he turns right into the choke slam. And the Giant gets the win in 6 minutes and 28 seconds. This felt like it went about 5 minutes too long.
Yeah, it definitely did. I mean, it wasn't horrible. I thought they did okay together. I thought they worked well together. Just because, like you said, the spots and things like that. And there wasn't too long of wrestles. I know there's a couple bear hug spots and things like that. Maybe it's because I was skimming just to get past these dead spots. But it didn't seem like it was as bad as I figured it would be.
Oh, no. I expected this to either go 30 seconds. And once it didn't go 30 seconds, I was like, oh, this is going to be bad. And I agree with you. It was much better than it had any right being Jim Duggan here in 1996. But at the same time, with all the bear hugs and things, I don't get it. Why?
Maybe it makes you wonder if Duggan saw like, okay, it's the Giant. I need to work a little better to keep this guy looking strong, or just doing something more.
Or keep my spot.
I'm not working Bubba anymore. I'm not working Bubba tonight.
Isn't that what we just saw last week or the last Nitro when Bubba did that with Sting? I'm not working Duggan anymore. Fuck Saturday night. I'm going to go out here and put on a hell of a show. And he did with Sting.
Absolutely.
And now Duggan kind of turns around and does it here. I don't want to discredit Duggan here, but when I say that the match went 5 minutes longer than it needed to, I just feel like where Duggan's at on the card, this match just went 5 minutes longer than it needed to. The Giant, give Duggan his spots and then choke slam him and take it home. Instead, this is stretched out 6.5 minutes. It might be the longest Giant match outside of, his matches with Hogan.
Definitely could be. That's interesting. But you can cut this match in down to 1 minute and then get a cruiserweights on there for 3 or 4.
There you go. I don't even know the last time we've seen a cruiserweight match on this show. It's been over a month.
Ridiculous.
During this match, there were 2 big signs in the crowd. Call Brian. That's Brian Pillman. 1-900-288-PILL. Is Brian Pillman seen in the crowd? Brian Pillman comes out with 2 large banners here, and the cops even intercept him in the front row, trying to stop him from jumping the rail. Doug Dillinger, the security guard, grabs Brian Pillman and drags him away as Bischoff claims he's even going down there. Obviously, he doesn't leave the announce desk, but he claims he's going to go down there trying to sell this as legit shoot. Eric Bischoff trying to work everyone on this angle as he went so nuts behind the scenes, it's reported, that several employees actually believed he was mad about Pillman interrupting the show. However, by working the cameraman and the director, legitimately almost anybody knew that Pillman was actually there as a work. So they avoided any shots of him, and the whole thing was ineffective, which is true. If you watch this, the camera never actually pans to Brian Pillman. There's only that one shot of him trying to jump the guardrail. Other than that, you really don't even realize Pillman's involved in this entire melee going on during the Giant and Duggan match.
Yeah, I had no idea what the heck it was. I think made a comment. I think I put in my notes that there was a fan going crazy downside, and then I realized it was Pillman. And they just talked like Bischoff kind of announces it. He's like, "That's Brian Pillman," but you can't even see him. Like you have no idea that it's Pillman down there. So yeah, it didn't work out for me. By the time you realized who it was, you kind of knew it was over. So and he was getting carried out. So it was. I get what they were trying to do, but it was kind of a waste because it didn't really work out.
Right. It's a case of trying to work everyone, and then you work them too much, and you can't even really focus on the story you're trying to tell. So he kind of fucked himself there, did Eric Bischoff. Missing again this week is another Steve Grissom interview. I know you're sad about that. If you think they spend too much time each week on him, you wouldn't be alone in that assessment, Steve. But it's a Harvey Schiller deal, and thus WCW pretty much has to go along with it. Luckily for us, the WWE Network seems to cut these interviews out. Good for us, I guess.
To be honest with you, man, I just got a WCW magazine. I got like 10 of them in, and one of them, I can't remember the month. I think it was March of '96. And inside there's a whole page dedicated to Steve Grissom winning that Daytona race. So it wasn't just Nitro where they pushed this down your throat. It's in the damn magazine too.
So the next match was supposed to be the Road Warriors taking on the Nasty Boys. But the Nasty Boys are nowhere to be found. Instead, we have black curtains, pipe and drape, hiding some Harley Davidsons. You can hear them revving up. And as the motorcycles bust through these silly black curtains, it's the Steiner brothers, Rick and Scott Steiner. Back in WCW, welcome home to the Steiner brothers. And it makes you wonder where the Nasty Boys are. The commentators even ponder. We find out they're in a hospital somewhere. And then the question becomes, who put them there? Obviously, it appears like maybe it was the Steiners, but they also speculate it could have been the Roadies. It really doesn't matter as we get an unannounced, on free TV return of the Steiner brothers versus the Road Warriors. Unfucking believable.
Is this their return from? Is this the first time they've been in WCW since they left WWF?
Yes, unless you count that collision in Korea, which I guess you really can't. So yes.
So where did they go? Were they in Japan for that year plus?
Man,
or did
they did shots in Japan. They had that a couple shots in ECW. I couldn't really tell you what the hell they were doing a whole lot during that period.
It sounds like they were just taking some time off.
I think I think a little of that was that when they left in the WWF in what was that, 94? Or was that, yeah.
Was it 90? It was 94.
I think they were still under contract for quite a while, so they couldn't jump to WCW immediately at that point. And I don't really know what was going on beyond that. I don't really know what I used to know. I remember doing some research and shit before, but it's been so long I can't remember. But they are back, and their very first appearance is against the Road Warriors. And I noted immediately that Hawk looks less bloated and more alert this week. Probably the first time since they've been back. And this match is just a what's what of signature moves here, just from bell to bell. Scott starts off with the rolling belly-to-belly suplex on Hawk, and he forces him to take it, followed by the pump handle slam. Hawk comes back, knocks Scotty off the middle rope, and nails the big flying clothesline and the neck breaker. Scott comes back with the double underhook powerbomb. It's funny to see the Roadies get thrown around like this, by the way. Tags are made to Rick Steiner and Road Warrior Animal. Animal nails his power slam, standing drop kick, and the big jumping elbow drop. And then Rick Steiner comes back with a Steiner line, but Animal doesn't bump. But a second one sends Animal, whether he wanted to or not, to the mat. And holy shit, Rick Steiner picks Animal up and has him suspended in the air as he releases him in a German suplex. I've never seen the Roadies manhandled like this. And a middle rope overhead belly to belly from Rick Steiner onto Animal. Holy shit. And Scott Steiner back in with his own overhead belly to belly on Animal. And then Steiner's actually get some heat on the Road Warrior as we get an LOD chant. Because of course we are in Crockett country. A double clothesline by Animal and Scott Steiner send both men down. Hot tags to Hawk. And Rick Steiner's Hawk takes out both Steiners. And the big flying shoulder block on Rick. They then nail their protected doomsday device on Rick Steiner as Animal takes the bump backwards for him. And Scott Steiner breaks up the pin. Rick Steiner then with a release German on Hawk as the Steiners try their own doomsday device on Hawk, but Animal distracts and Hawk manages to escape that. It's a diving clothesline from Scott. Then a diving shoulder or something from Animal. People dying everywhere. Bodies laying everywhere in the ring. And then Scott Steiner busted out, Steve, the Frankensteiner back in WCW on Animal. And then they send Hawk up for the big Steiner Bulldog off the top rope. And as the ref tries to get Scotty out of the ring, Animal with a spiked elbow pad to the head of Rick. And the Road Warriors steal the win in 10 minutes and 8 seconds. Both teams were over. The Roadies a little more over maybe, but it was like a different team tonight, the Road Warriors were. This was the best they've looked in I don't even know how long. And I don't know that they ever have a match like this again. Why wasn't this on Uncensored instead of what we get with the worst match of the year candidate there with the Chicago Street Fight?
I have no idea why this wasn't on Uncensored, but man, it's like the Steiners came down and they was like, Roadies, you're working tonight, whether you want to or not. I don't give a shit what you try to pull. You're getting tossed. You're going to sell, and you're going to get an ass whooping. And that's pretty much what the Steiners gave them. And it was just, the finish got kind of sloppy. They missed a few spots. They had to redo some things. So it wasn't like crisp and clean, but it was fun. It was a blast to watch this.
It was just cool. It was a showcase of both guys, all of their signature moves. It was tremendous. Really good. I don't know that the Roadies ever looked this good again, to be honest with you.
Probably not.
Promo time. Gene Okerlund in the ring interviewing the Steiner brothers. And oh boy, a Steiner's promo. How I have not missed these since the 1989 Grenade shows. They've been hunting the Road Warriors for 4 years around the world. And now they followed them to WCW. The way the Roadies won tonight was a disgrace. Scotty says the Road Warriors started it. The Steiners will finish it. Well, that's basically what he said. That's not really what he said, but that's what he meant to say. Sometimes you have to just translate for the Steiner brothers. Gene asks them, how about the Nasty Boys? Scott doesn't even address it. Not because he's trying to hide it or he's doing something heelish, doesn't want to pretend like they had anything involved with it. It's just Scott Steiner being Scott Steiner. Gene asks him a question. Scotty wasn't paying attention, and he answers a completely different question to end this segment, and it's just a Steiner's promo, as you might imagine. We continue on. I don't know if you watched this or not. It was the awesome 1-900 line ad. I've been waiting for this to debut.
Home about. We've seen a lot of these terrible ones.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of these in 1989, and now I don't know how often the Steiners get to talk here as a tag team here in 96. But as we move on with the show, it's the awesome 900 line ad featuring Mean Gene Okerlund kind of going around, sneaking around, trying to pick up gossip from some of the wrestlers. And in one of the segments, you see Sting at a dinner table talking with Johnny B. Bad. And I find that hilarious because it's only a week or two before Bad's obviously gone to the WWF. They can no longer use his likeness, or at least they no longer want to use his likeness. So as this commercial rolls on, which they use for months and months to come, they put a big black spot over Johnny B. Bad's face. Just low budget WCW shit. I mean, just change the clip. It's just hilarious.
That makes too much sense, man.
Oh, you're going to like this. Headed to the ring next is not only one half of the tag team champions, but he's now also the TV champion, dual champion. Total package Lex Luger taking on Alex Wright. This is supposed to be Luger versus Johnny B. Bad in Johnny's return match for the TV title, but as I pointed out, Bad quit earlier in the night. So it's Alex Wright getting the shot here. As Jimmy Hart has power of attorney, we've learned, over Lex Luger, and he pulls Lex Luger from the Chicago Street Fight at Uncensored. Alex Wright controls the match early on, leaping plancha to the floor, and a top rope double axe handle back in the ring. Wright gets a 2 count on Lex. Luger pulls Wright by the trunks and sends him face first into the turnbuckle. Works over Wright's back. Alex comes back with the reverse body block, tries an up and over in the corner, but gets caught and eats a snake eyes on the top turnbuckle, and the crowd actually pops because, once again, we're in Crockett country. And believe it or not, even Lex Luger was a Crockett guy at one time. Alex Wright makes another comeback with a missile drop kick. He goes up top again for a reverse body block, but Jimmy Hart runs down to interfere. Wright winds up kicking Jimmy off the apron and goes for a dive, but Luger catches Alex and drops him in a shitty hot shot and gets the win in 6 minutes and 36 seconds. And again, we get a little bit of comedy here as Luger looks surprised again as he celebrates after the match as Jimmy Hart's standing next to him. Luger says, "What are you doing here? This might be the most interesting Jimmy Hart has been since at least 1991.
Leave it to Lex Luger to get Jimmy Hart over for you. Not a bad match, though. Alex Wright did pretty well. Luger did well. Nothing bad there.
I got a question. Why Lex Luger to get the TV title? I mean, he's much further up the card than a TV champion. He's always been further up the card than a TV champion. And there's so many guys that could benefit from it right now. Your Eddie Guerreros, your Chris Benoit's, your Dean Malenkos, your Finlay, Belfast Bruisers, Steve Regal. So many guys could really utilize that belt much better as Saturday night type guys, if you will. Even if you wanted to give it to Big Bubba or Duggan or one of those lower card guys, like the guys lower on the totem pole. I don't get the whole idea of putting the belt on Luger.
I don't know either. He doesn't do anything with it, obviously. He just kind of carries it around. He never loses it, really. I mean, I know he does, but he doesn't. It just devalues the title to me. He's not going to be on Saturday night defending it. He's not going to be in programs for the TV title. It's just on a main event player when it should be on a mid-card player and making it meaningful. And the only thing I can think of is maybe they have a guy in mind to beat him for it down the line, which I highly doubt because Bischoff doesn't know how to book past 1 week, let alone a month
Bischoff
or two in
doesn't
advance.
book. Let's make that clear, though.
Bischoff, or Kevin Sullivan,
right?
Whoever's booking this shit.
Right.
So, like, I just don't see that being the case at all. So, other than that, I really have no good explanation as to why.
I can see Kevin right now. Give it to Luger. It doesn't matter.
He's never going to defend it. So, what's the point of having the belt on him? That makes more sense to me than we just need to get on a name. Like, that makes no sense.
It's main event time. It's a 6-man double strap match. You just know Kevin Sullivan's all over this in the booking. Hulk Hogan, the Macho Man, and the Booty Man in a rematch of sorts against Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, and Kevin Sullivan. And holy shit, has Liz had some work done. I don't know when she had it done, but yowza. You can tell this week with the leopard print or whatever the hell kind of print dress she has on, those breasticles have grown quite a bit over the years.
Oh, yeah.
And the rules here in this double strap match are it's a lumberjack match, and all of the lumberjacks not only have straps, but the wrestlers in the ring also have straps they can use as well. Talk about overbooking a gimmick match here. And of course, everyone on the outside has to be in flannels, even the Blue Bloods, which is actually comical. Regal and Bobby Eaton and whatnot in flannel shirts, but the Faces of Fear, so we can see Haku in a flannel shirt. If you ever wonder what anybody looked like in a flannel here, just go watch this episode of Nitro. The Giant, DDP, he gets a white trash flannel shirt, of course. Loch Ness, they even found a flannel to fit Loch Ness here. The Road Warriors out here, Conan, and Dave Sullivan, who I didn't even realize was still on the payroll in 1996. Giant holds Hulk Hogan up for Ric Flair to lay in some chops on the floor, and Loch Ness wants to take a shot with the strap, but Hogan ducks, and Loch Ness nails the Giant. Giant immediately clocks Loch Ness, and they begin brawling, if you want to call it that, up the aisle. It was awful. Loch Ness looked like he didn't even, it's almost like it wasn't even scripted, and he had no idea what the hell was happening. The look on his face and the terrible pulled punches he was throwing at the Giant, it was terrible.
Yeah, he could barely get up the ramp. So this is what started their match at Uncensored, right?
Yes.
This is what kind of led to it. So at least they gave us something instead of just, getting Uncensored and say, hey, here's the match. At least it has some sort of meaning behind it. I didn't mind it. And they got him out of there, so they didn't look ridiculous for the whole match.
So this is
you don't want those big guys wearing that shit.
No, it's ridiculous. And this is a 6-man tag. Lumberjack match, double strap match. There's straps everywhere. The Giant and Loch Ness have now brawled off into their own world, and Kimberly comes out with flowers again, scouting the Booty Man. Mongo wonders, who is she looking for? Eric Bischoff responds, not Johnny B. Bad, that's for sure. Way to stick it in there, Eric. Talk about overbooked nonsense. This shit is I can't even fathom what the fuck is going on. At this point in this match, there's 6 guys in the ring going at it. Half of the Lumberjacks are beating the shit out of each other outside of the ring. I don't know. There's Kimberly in the fucking aisleway with flowers. I don't know. If Flair finally bails, shows you how good the Lumberjacks are. Ric Flair bails and he makes it all the way back to the entrance before he stops to allow Animal to catch up to him and carry him back to the ring. Meanwhile, Hulk Hogan takes out all of the heel Lumberjacks single-handedly on the floor because he's Hulk Hogan. Ric Flair is more over than Hogan here, I noted, though. They were popping big, loud woo chants as Flair laid in chops on the Hulkster. But out of nowhere, no build-up, just in the middle of nowhere, big boot and a leg drop from the Hulkster on Ric Flair gets the win in 6 minutes and 27 seconds. What made it even more ridiculous was he did it right next to Kevin Sullivan, and Sullivan had to pretend like he didn't see it and walk away so he could justify why he didn't break the count up. This was a clusterfuck.
Oh, yeah, this was bad. This was terrible. And the finish was horrible, too. Like, Flair's your world champion, and he just gets a big boot and leg drop out of nowhere, and that's it.
And it was out of nowhere. There was no build-up. There was no Hulk up. There was no spot.
No. There was nothing. And that essentially, that's your world champion. And he just jobbed out like a bitch. Like, it made no sense. The match was terrible. It was a cluster. I don't know what you expect when you have this sort of match going on. A 6-man tag strap match, Lumberjack. Like, that's, you hear that, you can already tell it's terrible. Very, very shit ending to an overall decent show.
Yeah, talk about
it. Does make you wonder. I know you mentioned it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I was just going to say, it was just absolutely ridiculously overbooked.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, like, you mentioned Bischoff basically refuting everything Meltzer said, and I don't want to be the one to take Meltzer's side on anything, but he took a lot of shots at Johnny B. Bad tonight. In this match, he took shots at him when Luger came out and things like that. So he took the time and the effort to go out of his way to trash Johnny B. Bad on his way out the door, even though the dude was working without a contract and he still was professional enough to come back and drop the title on you instead of doing what you did with the London Blaze. So it's hard for me to believe what Bischoff is selling because he hates Dave Meltzer. So when you hate somebody, you're not going to give them any credit as far as anything they get right, whether it's true or not. So
no, I think there's partial truths in there, but I also think a lot of this anger here that Bischoff, or frustration Bischoff's letting out here, is he knows where Johnny's going, or he knows where Mark Marrow's going. And, obviously that couldn't have made him happy.
Well, I get that, but also he has to realize now that he's got Hall and Nash coming. Right. So is it really that bad that Johnny B. Bad's leaving? Like, who cares? Just let him go out the door. See ya. Right. But I get it. He's just making shots to make it sound like Johnny B. Bad couldn't hack it with the big boys, so he's going to the WWF and messing with those guys.
Yeah.
But then you do that, and then you turn around and your two new hot off the press guys come in, and it's like, okay, you just trashed this dude for going to the WWF. But you're going to take two of WWF's guys to come over. So you look like shit, too. If they're so bad, why are you signing them?
Right. Yeah.
So I feel like there's some animosity there. Those comments were, I don't know, felt like there's a little sting to them.
Oh, I'm sure he wasn't happy. I just don't know that everything happened the way Dave Meltzer reported. I'm sure there's half-truths to some of it.
That's probably accurate for sure.
We close out this episode of Nitro, though. Mean Gene in the ring with Kevin Sullivan, Ric Flair, and Arn Anderson for a change instead of the baby faces. Sullivan talks the Doomsday Cage match, claims Arn Anderson is in Cage 1, Sullivan and Luger in Cage 2, Ric Flair in Cage 3. It was very confusing. I don't think they had an idea of what they were doing yet with the cage, which is scary because we're only a couple weeks out. Arn Anderson says, when you marry, you tell God till death do us part. Well, they've been married to Hogan and Savage for at least the past 10 weeks, and this won't be over until death do us part. Nothing here tonight even vaguely resembled wrestling. That's a shoot. I love that line here. Arn Anderson knows what he's talking about, but he does call it a sample of Uncensored. You haven't even begun just to sample what we see at Uncensored here. Ric Flair closes the promo. He says, you can whip Sullivan, Flair, and Arn, but don't touch Woman or Liz. He wants to know where Hogan's at now, and he's got Macho's Woman. He's got Savage's number. He's got the whole world in his hit. So that's where Bray Wyatt stole that from. Ric Flair storms the announce desk, but we end the show. Hot way to come off a no show last week. So there was no show last week. They come back with a really, really, really super episode this week. Other than that 6-man match, everything else on the show was great.
Yeah, it was a really good show. You just cut out the last 10 minutes and you'd be just fine. You'd have a solid show. They're kind of getting some of it figured out. They're getting some of that undercard stuff figured out and things like that. But they just, for whatever reason, I don't think they can consistently put together a decent show, top to bottom, like beginning to end, not necessarily segment to segment, but beginning to end, they just can't figure out a way to get it good.
So segment of the night, was it that strap shit fest at the end of the show? The Steiners return to take on the Road Warriors. Pillman showing up in the crowd, or Lex Luger and Alex Wright? I'll throw that in there just because you're the one making a decision here.
Thanks. No, there's no way you can't pick the Roadies and Steiners. Like you said, this is the Road Warriors' best match in a long time. Probably their best match in this entire run. Probably their best match, their last good match ever, outside of maybe that street fight at WrestleMania 13, if that's your style. So pure wrestling match, I would say this is probably their last best match. And this was awesome. They beat the shit out of each other. I just wish we could have seen this in '89 with a feud and a story. Yeah, that would have been something. Too bad we ain't covering this match on the grenade outside of what we got coming up with Starrcade. But yeah, it's very unfortunate that didn't happen. But yeah, this is an awesome match.
Yeah, you can't deny the Steiners and Roadies match is easily the segment of the night here for Nitro. As we move on, more WWF notes real quick. The Superstars taping on March 10th in Corpus Christi. DeMeltz reports a newcomer named either Craig Johnson or Dwayne Johnson got a pin over the Brooklyn Brawler. DeMeltz says he's not sure who the guy was, but it was a tryout match, and he looked green, but okay. Meanwhile, on that same taping, the Ringmaster changed his name to Stone Cold Steve Austin. So Dwayne Johnson and Stone Cold all in the same taping. Very interesting.
Wow. I did not know that. They basically started together.
Yeah, to a degree, yeah. Also, we learned that Hakushi is gone from the company, and the only thing I can say about that is good for him. Thank God. And I don't mean that because I want him gone. I wish him so much better here. It can't get any worse.
In the sense that he's going to go to greener pastures.
Yes,
it's just unfortunate. We never really got what he could have been.
Yeah. Leave it to Vince. As we kick off Monday Night Raw for March 11th, here live, this is a live episode of Raw in the Freeman Coliseum, San Antonio, Texas, the home of Shawn Michaels. And we start off with Savio Vega in the ring with Stone Cold Steve Austin, accompanied by Ted DiBiase. The Chiron reads Stone Cold Steve Austin, but Vince actually calls him the Ringmaster before changing it up about a minute or two into the actual match. We see Mark Henry ringside. This is before he joined the WWF. At this point, he's headed to the Olympics in '96 there in Atlanta, and the WWF are going to be his sponsors. So that's why we see Mark Henry ringside here. They have plans to make him a wrestler someday. As the match gets going, it's back and forth. Austin takes over with a nasty clothesline to the back of Savio's head. After that, it's methodical, take-him-apart style offense from the former Ringmaster. Austin finally runs into a spin kick as he charges into the corner, and Savio makes the comeback. And another spin kick in the corner as Savio takes the bump to the floor. Austin, you can see as he jumps into the corner to take that kick, puts his feet on the bottom turnbuckle so that he can take a backflip bump kind of over the top rope to the floor as well, along with Savio. So he's still trying to bump like the Stone Cold or the stunning Steve Austin of old in WCW, but giving some of his nagging injuries, probably not a wise idea here, but I can respect that he's really trying to put Savio over and really make himself stand out here. But they go to the floor here during that spot, and they wind up brawling on the outside and up onto the apron, where they wind up both being counted out in 6 minutes, 20 seconds. But they don't hear the bell. They continue to fight in the ring, back and forth, rolling around, trading punches. They can't be separated. Finally, Savio nails the flying, spinning heel kick, sends Austin to the floor to end the segment.
This was good stuff. These two work perfect together. I love this feud. This is kind of the start of it. You didn't really know it. This kind of seems like a throwaway match where two guys with names are in there. You can see the heat and the intensity that these two bring out of each other. And Savio's great, man. He makes anybody look good, especially here. When he gets a little bigger and turns into like Los Boricuas and stuff, he kind of gets a little lazy.
Yeah.
But he hasn't gotten there yet, and he still looks awesome.
I blame the nation for Savio's downfall as far as his work rate goes anyway.
Yeah. Once he got in there, I know there's a match on Raw with Undertaker that's coming up in 98, I think. 97 maybe. Oh man, it looks so bad. Like there's so many close near misses that they're lucky they were near misses because somebody could end up really hurt. But we'll talk about that when we get there. But this feud, I'm glad that we get this before he gets to that point.
Right, yeah, and so we do get Austin and Savio Vega at WrestleMania, and this is the beginning of it right here. This fight you see right here is both guys really know how to put it over and get it over, and this feud actually will continue on to Superstars, where for some odd reason, Steve Austin is picked to replace Razor Ramon in the tag team title tournament as Savio's partner. And so on the March 23rd edition of Superstars, it will be Austin and Savio taking on the Body Donnas in the semifinals of the tag tournament. But the finish sees Austin refusing to tag in, walking away, and then as Vega kind of clears the house on his own and goes for the cover, Austin comes off the top rope onto Vega and basically costs his own team the win. And the Body Donnas then advance to the finals at WrestleMania. So that continues their feud. Obviously, that's not part of Raw, but anybody that was kind of curious how this continued, there you have it. And that kind of continues to set up their match at WrestleMania.
Simple but effective.
Absolutely. We continue on and we see earlier tonight before Raw, Mark Henry tosses Jerry Lawler around the ring. He's headed to the Olympics. As I pointed out, sponsored by the WWF. They got to put over their American athlete, Mark Henry here. We'll see how he does there in the Olympics. WWF denim jackets, $23. I'm not into denim, so we'll move on. Vince McMahon in the ring. Out first, Goldust, accompanied by Marlena, followed by Rowdy Roddy Piper. So we get Goldust and Piper in the ring as Razor, of course, is suspended now. The idea of the Miami street fight has been not put on hold, it's been done. It's put away as Razor's jump into WCW. Roddy Piper is going to give Goldust a piece of his mind. Goldust wants a piece of something else. Piper's been in 17 movies. Never seen Goldust in a movie, except maybe in a dark alley making a few quarters. Yikes. Goldust isn't fooling anyone, says the Hot Rod. He just wants attention. These are all mind games. Piper again references Goldust, compares him to Adrian Adonis and their feud back in 86-87. Piper says, let's get the sexuality right. Goldust is what he is, and Piper is a lesbian. I guess because he likes girls? Piper admits it takes a real talent to become the Intercontinental Champion like Goldust, but Goldust should be proud of the prestige, but instead he's messing with Piper to move up the ranks. Piper then says, not even Freddy Krueger comes into Roddy's nightmares. Goldie gets down on his knees and crawls over to Hot Rod, tries to feel on Piper's leather jacket as he asks Piper to come to his back lot. Goldust remains on his knees as he crawls around behind Piper, rubbing on his leather jacket, Piper trying to ignore him, but then Goldust does the unthinkable. He tries to lift up Piper's kilt, get a peek underneath the kilt of the Hot Rod. Roddy finally grabs Goldust by his arm, yanks him up as the two go face to face, but it doesn't take long for Goldust to try to undo Roddy Piper's belt. Even touches Roddy across the chin and begins to rub himself, sticking his tongue out and licking it to and fro, I guess. Best way to describe it. Piper shoves him back, but Goldust smacks Roddy Piper. And Piper fights right back, nails Goldust, who takes a bump. Roddy promises he's going to make a man out of Goldust come WrestleMania. And I wrote, is it a coincidence that Roddy has had some of the better in-ring promo segments lately on these shows? He's really done a good job with these, and Goldust, holy shit, yet another week of this stuff.
Yeah, Piper's been awesome. He in all this stuff he said and just all the comments, he got in there. It takes a great athlete and the prestige of being an IC champion. So during all this, he's still putting Goldust over. Like, Goldust can't just play mind games his way to the IC title. It takes a great athlete to do that. And so he did a great job of putting him over with that line, and then obviously the rest of the stuff was damn good as well. This entire segment was awesome. Both guys did great. Goldust, again, us talking about it does us no justice. So if it's been a long time since you people have watched it or you've forgotten about it, just go back and watch his segments. And it's hard to even explain what you're watching, why it's so great. Most people will turn this on if you don't know any better, you're like, man, this is terrible. What the hell is this guy doing? He's rubbing up all over this guy, or what the heck is going on? But now I understand what he's doing, and it's next level stuff. I hate to repeat myself over and over, but every week he ups the ante and he raises the bar of what Goldust can be, and I'm still entertained as hell from it. It falls apart when he gets with Luna and things like that, and all the different gimmicks and outfits and stupid shit that he goes through, but he's far from there. And this initial run of Goldust was awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, describing these things or even playing sound bites, it doesn't really do 10% justice to what this looks like when you're actually watching these segments. So absolutely, do yourself a favor and go out and check out these episodes of Raw and just kind of get an idea of the early instances of the Goldust character and some of the crazy shit that he did to get it over. Great job. Show goes on. It's the Godwins in the ring with Hillbilly Jim in their corner, taking on Alex Porteau and Jerry Mead. We've seen Porteau a lot lately here on the Grenade in 1989 NWA, and now he's here in the WWF in 96, and it won't be long before he's the Pug, Alex Porteau, for as far as that goes. Phineas has duct tape instead of athletic tape wrapped around his wrist. I thought that was clever. As he goes crazy, or as JR would put it, he has one of his spells, mule kicking the air and going nuts in the ring. I always enjoyed that. That was the only thing I enjoyed from Phineas Godwin. As Hank delivers the slop drop to Porteau, and the Godwins get an easy win here in 1 minute and 50 seconds as they'll make their way to the finals of the tag title tournament at WrestleMania. Show goes on. It's Shawn Michaels returning home to San Antonio. We get a vignette of Shawn preparing for his match at WrestleMania. He introduces his mentor, Jose Lothario, who trained him at age 19. And here we are 11 years later, and now Shawn is challenging for the world title at WrestleMania. He puts this over like it's a big deal, and it is, Steve, but he completely ignores that he did the same exact thing last year. So we get a couple clips here of Shawn doing a workout, some handstand push-ups, absolutely insane, and running the bleachers, things like that. So Shawn Michaels returns home to San Antonio.
Yeah, those handstand push-ups are always impressive. I like this is something different that they've never really done before either. Kind of show guys working out, getting ready for their match. Obviously the Hogans and stuff, he did his thing and you've seen it, but to sell a match and the distinct differences on how Shawn's getting ready compared to what Bret's doing, I thought it was really clever and different. At this point, nothing in the ring is going to enhance this match at all. Nothing any guy can do in the ring is going to help it or sell it even more than it already is being sold. So doing this and showing how they're getting ready to last an hour was very well done.
Absolutely. And we kind of get the other half of this now as we go to Bret Hart. He gets his own vignette because you knew he was going to get his own vignette. He returns to Calgary. He returns home himself. And then Bret begins to put himself over like no other. No shocker there. He says Calgary was the toughest territory, basically, is what Bret says here. He says Shawn's roots. Well, he says Shawn's roots is fast-moving Mexican style. Bret doesn't know any tough Mexican wrestlers. Wow. Bret's mentor is his father, Stu Hart, and nobody knows submissions better than the Hitman. He feels like those are going to come into play big time in the Iron Man match. Bret says he has more experience, and his experience is better than Shawn's experience. Shawn is a ping pong ball, bouncing around the ring with his moves. He has no effective moves but a big kick. People believe Shawn is the best wrestler, and that drives Bret nuts. This sounded so real. I can't even begin to tell you how real this felt. Some of the lines coming out of Bret Hart here. He says Shawn Michaels can't even lace Bret's boots. I thought these guys were friends. Shawn Michaels takes the babyface approach. Bret Hart just sounds like a motherfucker.
He sounds like Bret Hart.
Yeah,
I don't know what you expected from this, and I mean, he's probably not wrong. I mean, Calgary, from the stories I've heard, the bus tours and just going all the places and being out in the middle of negative 30-degree weather on a bus with 20 to 30 people and going town to town, that seems pretty difficult compared to Texas circuit, things like that. So I get where he's coming from there. But yeah, I mean, this just screams Bret Hart. He thinks he's the greatest thing ever. I mean, if that's fine. I don't have any issues with it. If that's how he wants to feel, and nobody's going to change his mind, obviously. And so
there was so many heel shots here, to a degree where it was unnecessary. I thought, there are no tough Mexican wrestlers. Say that today. There are no tough Mexican. Apparently, nobody's tough in Mexico, according to the Hitman here. And then he shits all over Shawn's offense. How are you selling this as a very competitive match when you say this guy has no moves but a big kick? And then that sentence where he says, people believe Shawn is the best wrestler. That drives me nuts. That just sounded like he completely broke kayfabe. That just sounded, the way he delivered it, it just sounded absolutely 100% real.
Yeah, and I know he hates this build to WrestleMania 12 because he's like, you watch the videos over and it makes me look like I'm really old because I'm in sweats and a jacket running the mountains in Calgary where it's all dark and gloomy. And then they got Shawn in a gym in Texas doing handstand push-ups and working in the ring and things like that.
Right.
He's like, it's a complete polar opposite. And he's like, you could tell based off of these videos who was winning. You already knew who was winning based off these vignettes if you was paying attention. It's the old guy versus the next big thing or the next new thing, the new toy that's coming through town. And Bret wasn't really happy with these vignettes. And I can see where he's coming from, but it's stupid to feel that way. It's like, who cares, man? Get over yourself for 10 minutes. And I love Bret Hart. He's probably one of my favorites. But I realize the issues that Bret has. And to be honest with you, I don't think he can get out of his own way. This is just the way he feels. This is his life. It's always been his life. From the day he came out until the day he dies, wrestling is his life.
Yeah.
So by default, he takes it way more serious than anyone else probably does. Because it's a different mentality when you're born into it. It's your livelihood. It's your family's livelihood. It's your whole life's work for 100 years or however long Stu was doing it.
Sure, but you never saw Owen take it this seriously. He was looking to get out. Supposedly,
but Owen never really wanted to do it, from what I can gather. He never really wanted to be that wrestler, but he was good at it, so he just kept doing it. Bret is the one that wanted to be the greatest. He always wanted his dad's admiration, and he always wanted to be that guy that was the best, and that's what he wanted to do in his life. And when somebody slights him by saying, well, Shawn's better than you, that's going to piss him off. And I kind of get the move thing. He's probably comparing it to his 5 moves of doom compared to Shawn's. So I get where he's coming from. You just don't know what Shawn's going to do match to match. He has his spots, but it's not formulaic like a Flair or a Bret match is, you know?
Yeah, well, this will continue because WrestleMania is still several weeks away, and there's another match scheduled for WrestleMania, and we'll listen to this real quick first before we get to that.
He was faster than a cheetah, stronger than a grizzly, more terrifying than a great white shark. And just when they thought it was safe to go back into the ring, he's back, and you ain't seen nothing yet.
So this is where we learn the Warrior is back. We already knew he was returning. He's returning at WrestleMania, and they announced right here that he's wrestling Triple H at WrestleMania. And I wrote, wasn't Roddy Piper supposed to make some big announcement, a big shocker as to who the Warrior's opponent was supposed to be? So I'm wondering, was it really intended to be somebody bigger than Triple H, and they kind of settled on Triple H here? I don't really know, but that's the match, and we kind of get a little fanfare here as they announce it as Triple H makes his way to the ring. accompanied by Michelle Snickler. Can't believe that's a name. Taking on Vin Greer. Not familiar with this guy. It's a paint-by-numbers squash with the Pedigree picking up the win here for Hunter in 1 minute and 52 seconds as we head on to the geriatric match report with Scheme Gene. He talks the Huckster versus the Nacho Man at WrestleMania. Billionaire Ted as referee. There will be no handcuffs or ladies' shoes allowed at ringside. We see the Huckster in training as he's looks like an old man kind of falling over and he can't do sit-ups and a lot of jokes like the inside joke, not inside jokes, just jokes about Hogan's age here. Then we see the Nacho Man in training, and all they're doing there is spray painting his bald spot. They promise that next week we'll see Billionaire Ted at the FTC hearings. I don't remember that one, so curious to see what they do there. Will there be Nightfall tonight? Asks Scheme Gene. He can't tell you here on TV, but call the hotline, and we'll find out if Nightfall will come tonight.
The 1-900 lying badly.
Yes.
Flashing on the screen when he's saying that. Pretty funny. Like the Huckster and Nacho Man stuff was stupid, but that line there at the end kind of salvaged it a little bit. Pretty funny.
Yeah, I kind of groaned at the Hogan stuff. It really wasn't even funny at all. The Savage thing I got a chuckle out of, but I mean it was fast and over with. I did like how that line at the end. Will there be Nightfall tonight? Call the hotline. I can't tell you on TV, but call the that's very much Mean Gene here. As we head into the main event, it's the Undertaker teaming with former foe Yokozuna, taking on Bulldog and Owen Hart. Diesel with a backstage promo during the entrances. He says upcoming matches with he and HBK taking on Bret Hart and The Undertaker at the house shows. Diesel hopes the rumors of Shawn aren't true. Vince asks, what rumors? But Diesel doesn't respond. I was confused too. What rumors? Meanwhile, Undertaker and Yoko go nose to nose in the ring. This is the first time they've ever had to team up. Yoko's a freshly turned babyface. Owen and Bulldog try to attack the two, but the baby faces are ready. And they take over. The faces dominate. That is until Diesel comes to ringside and nails Paul Bearer, lays him out on the floor, which leads to The Undertaker going after Diesel backstage, which is kind of heelish for The Undertaker because it leaves Yoko all alone in the ring to take on both Bulldog and Owen as we go into commercial break. Coming back, Owen and Bulldog double team Yoko, but Yoko makes the big comeback on both of them, which leads once again to Vader in yet another sweatshirt to hide those surgery scars, attacking Yokozuna from behind, allowing the Yoko and I guess The Undertaker to pick up a DQ win here in 5 minutes and 30 seconds. Post-match sees Ahmed Johnson, I want to say Jake, but that's just not true. Ahmed Johnson makes the save. He takes out Owen, takes out Bulldog, even takes out Vader all by himself. Finally, Jake the Snake Roberts arrives. Like I said, they needed to give this guy a head start to get to the ring. Jake shows up like a minute later as the heels take over on the baby faces momentarily. Jake tied up in the ropes. Owen and Cornette pounding on Jake. Vader beating on Yokozuna. Bulldog with a tennis racket on Ahmed. But then the baby faces make that Superman comeback. And we see Yoko and Vader rolling around on the mat. Just setting up the 6-man tag for WrestleMania here.
Yeah, I was disappointed in this. I wish Yoko and Undertaker got to work a little bit longer together.
Yeah.
I understand why they did it, but I was like, they looked really good together, and obviously they're friends outside of the ring and things like that. So they're going to work pretty well together. They had that chemistry that you would want in one of these like special tag team type matches. It's just unfortunate it lasted like 2.5 minutes, if that. But crowd went pretty nuts for the Yoko's comeback and things like that. So he's definitely over as a face. I mean, fans are loving it, and Vader I think helps with that just because he's so over as a heel, as a monster badass. So anytime he gets his comeuppance, even if it's Yoko, they appreciate it. So all in all, like, people care about this feud right now, and that's all you can really ask for a main event, or not a main event match, but a WrestleMania match. You want people to be invested in it somewhat, and they've done a great job of continuing this on. Just seeing these two beat the shit out of each other is awesome.
Yeah, and obviously, the match went 5.5 minutes, but that's with commercial. As you pointed out, about 2.5 minutes was shown on the actual TV program. This was clearly, even though it was a match, it was more so built to set up 2 different WrestleMania matches. Obviously, Diesel and The Undertaker, and then the 6-man tag as well. So that's what this segment was really set up to do, just sell the WrestleMania card, basically. I agree with you. I would have liked to have seen Yoko and Taker do a little more together as a tag team here, but it wasn't meant to be because it wasn't really the story they were trying to tell. Segment of the night, Steve, was it Savio Vega and Stone Cold, the Yoko match and all the aftermath, Goldie and Piper, or the Shawn Bret video series?
Well, it's definitely not Bret and Shawn. I went with Vega and Stone Cold. I love this feud. These dudes work great together. Like you mentioned earlier, Austin is still selling, like stunning Steve Austin and flying around the ring, and Savio just works great with that. And obviously Savio's returning the favor. So I know this is the start of a pretty long feud, but it's very entertaining and very good matches coming up. So I'm excited for those. Like I mentioned just a minute ago, I would have picked the main event. I just wish it was a little bit longer because I wanted to see Yoko and Taker work together a little bit longer.
Yeah, that would have made quite a superpowered team for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think I got to go with Vega and Stone Cold as well. I was kind of undecisive. I was deciding between that and the Goldust Piper promo because I thought Piper did another great job this week, and Goldust really did his part as well, mind you. But I think I got to lean towards the Vega and Stone Cold match just because there was actual action involved, and I felt like the wrestling was more important this week in that match and the story because, again, another match, everything on this show builds to WrestleMania. And that's no different. Vega and Austin will wrestle at WrestleMania.
Yep. It's a good job, Vince.
And the ratings are in. WCW Nitro does a 3.2 rating and a 4.7 share to Monday Night Raw's 2.9 rating and 4.2 share. So WCW wins in the ratings after a week off. It also explains the record-setting replay number that Nitro does this week, a 1.5, which is what like Vince is doing now, I think, or something like that anyway. So there we have it. WCW Nitro takes a week off. They come back, and the crowd's right back viewing Nitro. Nitro's winning again.
Not surprised. You missed their Nitro.
So you tell me, Steve, who's the real winner here? I mean, Raw was pretty solid all throughout, all the WrestleMania storylines and things being told, but Nitro was pretty good up until that last segment as well with the nonsense, all the horse shit.
Yeah, I'm going with Nitro on this one. The two non-finish, and then we got two jobber matches. It's just really not going to cut it when you have names against each other on every match on Nitro. I felt like this is my caveat here. They did a good job of putting on better matches, but the booking in the WWF is still leaps and bounds better than what WCW is doing at this point. I'm going with Nitro just because of the matches involved and nothing else, but I think if I was doing this in 1996, I would have picked Raw just because I would be so excited for WrestleMania 12 because it's WrestleMania. And right. So the booking and the storytelling that they did in Raw was very, very good and better than anything on Nitro altogether. But at this point, I hate to say this because it's not fair, so to speak, but I'm just basing it off the action, and the action was better on Nitro.
Yeah, it's just a different time now. I mean, we're 25 years removed. I totally get it.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're living in 1996, WWF is still on course, and it proves why they were the better company overall for all those years because they were amazing at storytelling and just everything making sense and really building up their pay-per-views, whereas WCW just threw shit on pay-per-views for the most part. So I agree with you, man. If we're sitting here in 1996, you would not only be hyped for Raw and WrestleMania, you would probably have to choose that just because it did a tremendous job of selling what's coming up. But we're sitting here just watching it in hindsight, and I agree with you. The wrestling was just overall better on Nitro, and that's why I'm probably going to have to go Nitro too, even though it's kind of sad because I guess Raw really was the better show based on what it was accomplishing. But overall entertainment-wise, I got to go WCW for the better matches.
Yeah, I'm just going based off of what entertained me the most. And I was more entertained with what was going on with Nitro. Like, I totally forgot the Steiners coming back. So when I saw them on the Harleys, like, oh shit, the Steiners are fighting. Then all of a sudden I heard the Road Warriors music and I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. And this was like a week ago when I watched it. So I was pumped right now to see this match, and I think a lot of that has to do with doing the memory grenade from 1989. So it's like, this is one of those matches I wish we had back then, outside of the Starrcade stuff. So I was really excited for that. Whereas I know the matches, I know the outcomes of WrestleMania 12, so it's just like, oh, this is the build to WrestleMania 12. Who cares? It's not my favorite WrestleMania. It's kind of one of those ones that gets talked about just because of Bret and Shawn a little bit. But for the most part, it's kind of lackluster. So the build itself is really solid. It's just, I know the outcomes of the matches, so it's kind of hard to be entertained. Like, I know this, that type of deal.
Right.
So it's not fair to Raw at this point.
No, it's not. But yeah, I got to go WCW there as well. And I agree with you wholeheartedly over the whole thing. You look at things on one side, WCW's leading into Uncensored. Meanwhile, WWF has WrestleMania upcoming. That also makes it more interesting as well, storyline purpose-wise anyway. But at the end of the day, it's action right now. And I remember that Rhodey's and Steiner's match myself. I remember turning on Nitro when they were both standing across the ring from one another. And the first question I had is, when the hell did the Steiners come back? I didn't realize that was their return. But I was like, holy shit, I got the Steiners and the Road Warriors across the ring from each other as I'm flipping channels. So yeah, I could see how that won over, some of the fans as well.
Oh yeah, especially if you like turn it on like you did. You flip the channel like, oh shit, the Steiners are here. Okay, I'm going to stay on here because who else is going to come out? Who else is going to be here? That sort of deal. That unknown aspect of what's going to happen next is still fresh in a lot of people's minds. And as of up to this point, WCW's killed WWF in those surprises.
Yeah, and they've won quite a bit of the
Luger,
ratings too here.
Luger, Lunder Blaze, Public Enemy, Sabu. I mean, we've seen all these guys come and go. So it's like, it seems like every 2 or 3 weeks you can count on somebody new showing up. Vince just doesn't have that going. He's bringing back old guys like Jake and Marty Jannetty, and they serve their purpose, name value wise, but they're not bringing anybody fresh and new in outside of Steve Austin and Vader. And they're kind of saving them guys for pay-per-views. Yeah.
Well, they got Mark Merrow coming. Maybe he'll save everything. We'll see.
That's right. Well,
Cactus
Marvelous
Jack
Mark
on the way in, too. That's true. Mankind's on his way in. So they got a couple guys coming in anyway. But I get what you're saying, absolutely. I mean, these are established major stars, and even on the underground with like Sabu and Public Enemy and things. So very big deal. Bischoff's doing a good job of acquiring some talent for sure. And that's really helping with the ratings as well. I would have to believe, on top of it being the Monday Night War, it's just, who am I going to see this week? But Steve, man, I appreciate you being here for another episode of Monday Warfare, the Battles Within, as we continue on with March. Next time, it's another 2 weeks of Nitro, another 2 weeks of Raw, as we head into Uncensored and eventually WrestleMania. It's a very busy time here of year in the world of professional wrestling.
Coming up on us now in real life. The WrestleMania build, which I can care less about. I'll definitely watch WrestleMania because it's Mania, but other than that, who cares? But yeah, it is fun. And, Uncensored is already up on Patreon, right? You can go listen to that now.
Yeah, you guys can go right now to patreon.com/WrestleCopia. Join that $5 all-access tier, gets you all the watch-along series. And that includes Uncensored 96, and pretty soon it'll include WrestleMania 12 as well.
Definitely go check that out, and we'll be back with some more action on Monday Warfare, right?
Absolutely. We'll be back very, very soon. In fact, we'll be back next week with more Monday Warfare. Steve, once again, thank you. And for Steve Eckstedt, I'm Ray Russell. Thank you guys for listening to another episode of Monday Warfare, The Battles Within.